So excited to have our first session. We're really honored to have really special guests and friends from South Africa. One of my personal mentors and inspirations, Professor Marion Keim, and her colleagues Marion and also Lyndon will be joining us today and sharing the presentation on the greatness of mentorship, heart, soul, and spirit, sort of frame our day and get us going. Just briefly on Marion is a professor of sport development and peace at the University of Western Cape in South Africa and chairperson of the Foundation for Sport Development and Peace and an advocate of the High Court. She's been very involved with many initiatives and projects, and it's a long list of amazing leadership roles. And particularly she's a part of the Olympic Education Commission for the International Olympic Committee, and then serves in various advisory roles to the Ministry of South Africa and their sport work. And so just an amazing leader in the sport for development space and the Olympic movement and in all aspects of sport and peace and social change. And we have our colleagues. We have Dr. Lyndon, who's the Chief Director of Sport and Recreation for the province of the Western Cape Provincial Government. Also part of the advocate of the High Court and has a doctorate in philosophy and exercise and recreation from the University of the Western Cape. And then we have Warren Lucas, amazing individual and great spirit, who's on the, who's a medical research council. He's doing his PhD in exercise science and is passionate about youth development through sport, networking, life skills, and engagement. So without further ado, Marion and I are really honored and so happy to have Marion and her colleagues with us today. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Marion, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, and the pleasure is really ours. So very warm wishes from a very cold and icy Cape Town in winter to all of you, and really thank you for having us, and Aaron and David, Matt, and Mary. And you know, Eli is such a networker. He really brings everybody together and makes us like the whole globe basically comes together now again in one of those seminars that he organizes. So it's amazing. Talking about mentorship, he is a mentor for all of us in terms of how one can network better and efficiently and bring really amazing people together. So thank you so much for having us. As Eli said, I'm at the University of the Western Cape, but I also chair an NGO. I was in the lucky position to have worked under Archbishop Tutu for 28 years as the chancellor of our university and still work with his daughter. In terms of mentorship and values, this is something that I really treasure for the rest of my life. The session today, the greatness of mentorship, heart, soul, and spirit, was actually looked at with a colleague of mine from Missouri, Professor Roy Tamashiro, and I said, what could I talk about a little bit because you don't have so much time. So we came up with that. And then subsequently, I actually found, and there are no coincidences, subsequently, I found the quote below after having had the title. So Nelson Mandela and Muhammad Ali had a very unique relationship. They met each other various times in 1990, the first time when Madiba came out of prison. And they had a special admiration for each other. And it was, I think, a shared understanding of values. It was a love for boxing. And also being two of the most amazing, greatest icons in the 20th century. So what Muhammad Ali said is what he will remember about Mr. Mandela, or Madiba, how we call him here, is that he was a man whose heart, soul, and spirit could not be contained and could not be constrained by racial and economic injustices, metal bars, or burden of hate and revenge. And what we have learned also in the country that I have been now for more than half of my life, 30 years in South Africa, is really teaching us about forgiveness on a great scale. So, Warren, you can continue. It is actually, when one looks at mentorship and what one would like to achieve, it's making a difference One doesn't even want to make a difference. One hopes to make a difference to somebody. And one of my favorite quotes is really that it is the difference that we have made in lives to others that will determine at the end of the day the significance of our lives. And likely or equally, Muhammad Ali had the same in terms of service of others is the when to pay for your room here on earth. So mentorship for me is actually a service. And it's a service that is touched by the heart, the soul, and the spirit. And if we go to Anahata, which is the heart chakra, and that is the chakra that we live with, that our life is colored with compassion, love, and beauty. And its principles of transformation, integration, this energy is said to brighten the earthly and the spiritual aspirations. So that means what we challenge our youth is always, do you know who you are? Do you know what you love? Do you know your sources for inspiration? Who inspired you? What moved you? What moved your heart, mind, and spirit? Because if you cannot inspire others, or unless you get inspired yourself, you cannot inspire others. So what touches people most are not the words, but the actions when they represent their values. And the values is something that goes through like a red thread also when I looked at the other presentations. So value-based approaches, we heard them from Aaron beforehand in terms of the Muhammad Ali Center and its work, confidence, conviction, dedication, respect, giving, and spirituality. A lot of us work with the Olympic values to be the best that you can be, balance between body, will, and mind, respect, and friendship. Paralympic values, the courage, the determination. And then also universal values. When we look at universal values, it's really amazing what we find. Or next. It's in terms of sometimes looking at, are we coming from the Western, the Eastern, the Northern, the Southern hemisphere? But when we look at various values here, and this is not a closed list, the service, the forgiveness, honesty, commitment, respect, and responsibility are there. But what we sometimes forget when we look at the outer rings is really the inner ring, that it really comes to love, which is your self-love and your love for others. Laura, next. In terms of mentorship, it is, we have learned a vital element in youth development for any sports, for any athlete, for any student, for any youngster. And when it occurs when a mentor is actually willing to invest time in your personal development, whether it's a student or an athlete or a child, as David said, when there is a trusting relationship, and when a mentorship plan gets developed, which is a concrete plan actually to look at the needs and the interests of your mentees, to recognize them, to understand them, and fulfill them. So mentoring success principles that we can measure actually is a commitment in terms of your time and vulnerability and process, also being vulnerable both sides. The meetings, regular meetings, prepared meetings, the process, which is your active listening and your feedback, and then review what has worked, what doesn't work, where can we improve. So I just gave an example. We always do mentorship plans with our students. We have done that over the years, where you have your mentorship objectives on the left, for example, then you have certain activities, and then you give a progress report to the students on the right-hand side. So this is something that we can also share in terms of how we do that, and then the time allocation that the mentee is prepared to put into the various objectives. When we speak about mentorship, it is capacity building. We building capacity in terms of leaders, in terms of change agents, in of sport development and peace. So providing mentorship also means providing career guidance, have a look forward, providing guidance, especially in the times now that we are in terms of COVID, for entrepreneurs, small business, innovative approaches, providing leadership skills and supporting young athletes to reach their potential. And to attend seminars, webinars, workshops. We send that out. Your conference is exactly what Eli and his team is organizing here. And with the mentees, also providing practical support to the communities in the field that we are passionate about. And not to forget also the monitoring and evaluation piece. So when we look at mentorship, it is soul, heart, and mind, because it covers the peace, yourself, happiness, fulfillment, harmony, love, and intelligence. So knowing yourself is something really ancient. If you go to the Oracle of Delphi, you climb up the stairs in Greece, you find the Oracle of Delphi, and it says the first principle is know thyself. And the second is everything in moderation. So know thyself, know yourself, be part of the process that brings positive change in terms of capacity building and leadership, using a values-based approach that everybody has to see what are our values, how do we want to go forward as an individual, as a collective. And I think it's more important in the days that we live now, in those unusual times, than ever. And then there's something great about everybody. So treating people as special and unique, no matter where they come from. And develop a detailed mentorship plan with your mentee. So passion and enthusiasm and courage and love and care, these are infectious. So showing them wherever you go, whatever you do, is something that we strive. My personal guiding mentoring principles, and I can speak to my two colleagues who are younger than me, but they are also mentors to me, both of them in big ways. It doesn't have to do anything with age or background or experience. It isn't, because everybody has something that you can share with everybody else. So with my team, what I can see, and this is not only the two that you see, but also from our foundation, the colleagues there, the personal mentorship principles that we have is a belief in the best of others and a care for others from within. And that care includes the heart and the soul and the spirit. So yes, what David said earlier on, we have an African saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And that means a whole community to work together to raise the next person to be the best that they can be. So I'm really, really delighted to hand over to Lyndon and to Warren. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Marion, and good afternoon, Eli and colleagues. I will also be doing a short presentation that Warren will be assisting me with as well. So thank you very much for the invitation as well. So I wanted to just reflect on my mentoring journey as well, because I think it's important to know that mentoring starts in the home. And my first mentors were, of course, my parents. And I think most people, if they are lucky, they have their parents as their mentors. And of course, one of the first things that we find out is what Professor Marion said earlier, that it takes a whole village to raise a child. And when one listens to your older cousins, your uncles and aunts, and they dispense wisdom freely, as they would if they want to give you a hiding, those are also mentoring when you have those discussions with them and you hear the tales, the stories that they tell about us, because in many cases, you actually don't realize that you are being mentored at that stage, because it is actually subliminal when they tell you an interesting story, and only as you go through life later on, you realize that is actually you being mentored. Warren, you can go ahead. In one of the aspects that I wanted to just talk about this afternoon to everybody is that my experience with mentoring is that you go through various stages in your life. When you get to school, particularly high school, your teachers become your immediate mentors, because your teachers are the first line. You normally engage with them. And what I've experienced in my life was that at an early age, some of the teachers recognized leadership qualities within me and started mentoring me. And I sometimes didn't understand what they were trying to do, why they were doing things, but because somebody was able to recognize some potential in me, I was then taken to adult meetings, teacher meetings, where I was asked to take the minutes. And at that stage, Eli and colleagues, I saw it as a chore. But I actually didn't realize by me having to take the minutes, I was being taught about administration, about things like motions, proposals, all of those minute-taking things. And today, I've been a government employee now for 22 years in a senior position, and I'm a better administrator because I was taught at an early age about the value of minute-taking and the ability to capture the essence of a conversation very crisply in those minutes. Thank you, Warren. One of the interesting aspects when you get to university, you actually realize that mentoring doesn't only have to be the teachers. You also have fellow students that can also be your mentors. In many instances, I have found that when you engage, particularly at the university level, your mentors will remain with you for quite a long time in life because you share commonality, academia, number one, and many times you are able to share your ideas with your professors. In my case, Professor Marion, who is still one of my mentors, allows me to bounce ideas around with her because in my position as the Chief Director for Sport and Recreation, it is always important to be able to take words of wisdom from others when you have to make important decisions, particularly about people and when there's money involved. And for me, the ability to have objective, independent advice from others is always so important. And I have found that Professor Marion and one or two of the other lecturers I still have touch with, they can help me to guide me in taking correct decisions as well. So I think the influence from senior mentors on your thinking and your decision making is very important. Thanks, Warren. I've also found that in life, many of the people that I know, adult people, did not have the opportunity to have an education in South Africa. Education is expensive in South Africa, and many people did not have the wherewithal in terms of the funding to be able to go to university or technicons. But I found that that is not a bar to be a mentor. Many people that I consult with do not have any tertiary education, but that does not mean that they cannot be your mentor. So for me, the life experience that Professor Keim has spoken about, that for me is indispensable because you can't buy that. So for me, a mentor with their life experience is very, very important. So I certainly believe that you must have some relationship, and it does not always have to be a formal relationship. It can be an informal relationship that you form with somebody as long as you value their advice. Thank you, Warren. One of the interesting mentors that I have is, in fact, my wife's grandmother. She's 85 years old. She lives with us. And every evening after I finish my work, I actually go have a cup of tea with her and I will chat to her about anything. And because she has this wide experience in life, she's able just to freely talk to me about anything. And I value that. Just if I'm struggling to grasp something, or maybe I had a difficult colleague or a difficult meeting, she will just give me some words of advice. And without me realizing it, over this last year, at the age of 85, Denise's granny, Denise is my wife, has become one of my mentors. And that has always been very interesting. I can tell you, both myself and my granny look forward to my afternoon 5:30 visits when I get to her place in the afternoon. Thanks, Warren. So just from my side, nurture the relationships that you have with your fellow students, with your lecturers, and with your family, because as I said, mentoring doesn't have to be formal at all. I see my time has run out, but I'll please hand over to Warren. I've said what I needed to say. Thank you very much, Eli.
Oh, thank you, everybody. My name is Warren Lucas, and I am a mentee of Professor Marion Keim and Dr. Lyndon Bouah. And as a result of being mentored, I am privileged to become and be a mentor myself to other aspiring youth. As a young person, I have been a gymnast my whole entire life. I coach gymnastics, and I often do a lot of exercise science research in gymnastics. It is my passion because in this sport, I've learned how to balance and be strong and to take things not so seriously, because falling is inevitable, but it's in how we get back up. That is the most important lesson in life that I've picked up. So I've provided a little bit of a timeline. Marion and Lyndon, I'm sorry for some of the embarrassing pictures from the past 10 years, but that's how long I know Professor Keim and Dr. Lyndon Bouah. So as a third year student in 2010, Professor Marion Keim took me for some sport development studies. And I was a third year in sports science. And this is the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Wilfred Lemke at the time, that came down to Cape Town to give us a very fantastic conference. And this is when I was first exposed to sport development. Then in 2013, 2014, 2015, I started working at the Western Cape government with, at the time, advocate Lyndon Bouah. Now he's Dr. Lyndon Bouah. And both of us have SA team colors, him in chess and me in gymnastics. And then in 2016, Lyndon graduated with his PhD when I graduated with my master's. And this was another fantastic day for us as mentors and mentees. In 2017, I was able to represent South Africa in Spain as I did some preventive medicine work. This was fantastic. And when I came back, I hit the ground running with creating the Youth Network for Sport Development and Peace. And these are some of the youth that I mentor at the moment. And together we have this organization where we collectively include young people in sport development and peace and stay connected in that way. Last year, I started my PhD, and I'm really excited to finish up in about 2.5 years' time. Please keep checking in with me and making sure that I'm still alive and not crying big crocodile tears, because the PhD is very difficult. However, with the guidance of my mentors, I am able to step up to the plate and follow through with that. And this is a brief history of the last 10 years for me. In our times together, I've been able to join Marion and Lyndon in a variety of different events. And these are some of the memories that we've got together. And this picture here, specifically in the middle, was taken earlier this year before the COVID-19 lockdown, where I've got a group of students at the Exercise Teachers Academy in Rondebosch. And right next to me here, Aletha is one of my previous students who joined me in leading this group in a group exercise instructor session. And then Marion has also joined me as I have become the president of Cape Town Gymnastics, and Marion was one of my keynote speakers at this fantastic event last year. And then we've also got Professor Christo de Koning. Some of you guys might know him because of his monitoring and evaluation expertise. I carry on with my youth mentorship through a variety of different platforms and gymnastics, the Sport Development Foundation, and my day-to-day life is typically what it looks like every day. And I've got some anecdotal advice for anyone that's listening. If you are a young mentor, because it can be difficult sometimes, because we always feel like we don't have enough of the goods to, you know, carry the voice of mentorship and leadership. So I've got 5 key points that I want to leave you guys with. First and foremost, say yes. Every task, activity, project, and duty in the workplace is a potential opportunity to expand the self. Secondly, ask for help. If you don't know how, someone else will most times will definitely say yes to teaching you. And if you ask, you will receive. Stay in touch from time to time. Send out an email, say hi, keep your connections alive. Number 4, collaborate. Combining ideas leads to change on bigger scales. Collaboration is recommended for all young people. And then take stock. This is my most important thing that I do every day. I do a self-inventory, and I always try and find out where I'm at, what my reflections are, who do I owe an apology to, how can I make my life better? And I leave it in yesterday so that when I get to the next day, it's in the past and I can be present. Lastly, Confucius once said that if you love what you do, you will never have to work a day in your life. Last month was Youth Month in South Africa, and I was featured as a PhD student with the Medical Research Council because apparently I'm doing some great work. So I wanted to leave you guys with this message that if you love what you do, you will never have to work a day in your life, and just stay connected with everybody that you come across, and yeah, be the best version of yourself. Thank you very much. And that's us.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Amazing start. for our first conversation and kicking us off. We're just starting to receive a few. Yeah, there's a great comment here, just in terms of like, the process of mentoring and how we need that support, and what are the critical factors that bring us together. Yeah, I guess I thought it would be great to follow up, with the question and Mary and I can perhaps throw a few questions as we begin. The question that occurs to me kind of as I hear getting us started, has to do with kind of the role of these powerful world leaders. So we kind of have the Mandela and Muhammad and Obama and, many people in our world, select people in our world that really stand out and kind of have this kind of global mentorship role. And then there's also different, other types of mentorship as well. But I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of these, like the power that these global mentors have and kind of what that means and how that relates to these frameworks you've introduced. Because like the Mandela and the Muhammad and others, and how do they kind of engage in a really, because there's a micro level, the macro level. So I just thought I'd share that question to see your thoughts.
Eli, if I could perhaps venture an answer, I think the principles that Nelson Mandela has stood for has transcended South Africa, and because his story is such unique that after 27 years he came out of prison not being bitter, but said that we should have reconciliation, and that saved South Africa probably in 1990 from going into a civil war situation that would have been devastating for our country. And I think because of those principles, the things that Nelson Mandela then said and what he stood for has then become universal guiding principles that other leaders around the world and normal people such as ourselves were able to adopt as well. And I think for me, what Madiba then has said, and through his books and works, and when one listens to his speeches, he's always quoted by most world leaders, and we listen to those words of wisdom, because if we didn't, some of us may not have been given the opportunities that came our way. Thanks, Eli.
Any other comments on? We have some questions now that are coming in, so we can, but if anyone else wants to respond briefly, then we can keep going to the questions.
I think it is the inspiration. If you have somebody that is a leader of a country who has survived what Nelson Mandela has survived and has a different approach, like of reconciliation and forgiveness, you feel just humbled. I mean, I come from Germany, where we had the Nuremberg trials and our own share of baggage and history to South Africa, and you feel humbled when you work here with the people that have had a different experience and are willing to share it. And I just that there was one comment here in terms of curious to know the panelists sort of having mentors that look like us and working with girls of color and how essential. I think this is a very interesting comment. I'm the only white woman in this trio. If you would have to speak to Warren and Lyndon, how they feel and what they represent. But my mentors in South Africa have been anything but white people. Where I work, where I live, where I work in communities, it's not a matter of color for me at all. It's a matter of your heart and what we talked about beforehand. So just a very brief one to this one.
Hi guys.
I just want to address that question. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I would like to take a swing at that one. So there is sometimes a lot of experiences can be lost in translation. So as a mentor, regardless of the person's ethnicity or color, what we need to do is be empathetic and learn how to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else so that we can understand their perspectives. In doing so, we are able to then navigate alongside that person to find a way to some kind of success, freedom, salvation from whatever is holding them down, and then walk with them on the journey to that experience. So that's my take on mentoring people of different ethnicities. Yes.
Excellent. We have just a question about sharing and so forth. And so, yeah, Mara, yeah, everything will be shared. Follow-up question from Mara has to do with recommending resources on mentorship. So maybe, yeah, it's a great question, like, good books or good resources. What would be something you'd really suggest everyone get their hand on to kind of keep us engaged in this? The question Mara has is the ages of 12 to 17, but yeah, that's a really great question. So thank you, Mara. It's just wonderful to hear your thoughts on that question.
Eli, there's recently been a book that has been released, and I will send the book's name and details to you. One of the authors have studied a group of lion cubs and how they have grown up in a particular setting in Africa, and they've used some of the principles of that lion cubs and then set it out in a mentoring book. And I thought that book for me was very useful, which I read in December. And I will certainly send you the name through Marion later on of that particular book as well. So that book has helped me with a younger mentoring, but I'm not aware of books specifically geared for 12 to 17, but certainly I'll look into that as well.
It's this one.
Yes,
Fundamentals for effective fundamentals for effective mentoring, raising giant killers. Also, there is a leading Madiba one and different ones. But I would like to make a suggestion as a way forward also to compile a list, because it's not us that have all the information. But I think with so many people here online and the people that I will still speak, to compile a list of mentorship material, which could also consist of videos, because I know of a lot of videos that would display mentorship in different ways. Videos, publications, reviews. I think it would be great to do that as one of the follow-up activities.
I've invited, yeah, go ahead, Marion.
Yeah, I was going to say too, in terms of other just resources that I was thinking of, is there is a website called Teaching Tolerance. And if any of you are familiar with that, they have a lot of resources on there for working with kids of all ages. A lot of it is classroom stuff for teachers, but there's a lot of activities for students. And I think that gives some opportunities for teachers to sort of hone their mentoring skills. But it's called Teaching Tolerance, and you can just go online and find them.
I invited David up. He's one of the hosts of the conference with Mentor, and I just thought perhaps David had a great comment about other kinds of resources and suggestions, and I thought it might be nice to just share, if David would be willing to share, or also if you have any questions or comments reflecting on what Marion and her colleagues have shared at the global level.
Sure. Thanks, Eli. I thought you just missed seeing me. It felt good.
Yeah,
I got this chat that said the host would like you to share your video. It felt very official.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to Professor Marion's point, the entire purpose of mentoring.org and of Mentor over the last 30 years is to compile resources. It will not answer all questions, I can assure you of that. And there are lots of different takes on different forms of mentoring. And some things will be culturally relevant and in different places around the US and around the world. But mentoring.org is a great place to start. Everything's free on there in terms of all sorts of resources, from videos to books to requesting training if you're in America through the National Mentoring Resource Center, again, free. And even this question, we have an entire suite of resources on racial justice and mentoring across race and ethnicity, and the great question that was asked about identity. I think, to both Professor Marion's point and to Dr. Warren's point about, sort of identity and mentoring, I think one of the things we really focus on around mentoring, and I think the American mentoring movement has done a lot of this, is this focus on one mentor. And yeah, it would be great if there was this one mentor in everyone's life who loomed large and was everything. But the way this really transpires in life, for those of us who are sort of mentor privileged, is that we have lots of mentors to turn to at different times. And if we're lucky, some of them do share our identity and some of them don't. I mean, that's the best way to learn. And so I think the question of whether you can mentor across race or ethnicity or generation or country or language has a lot to do with, do you have a lot of complementary mentors in your life? And our goal should not be for every young person and every person to have one heroic mentor. It should be for them to have mentors for different things. And some mentors, by the way, who have the wisdom to say, I'm not the mentor for this. Let me find you a better mentor for this moment. I mean, that's the best kind of mentor there is. So anyway, I would just
great. No, thank you. Yeah, maybe to reflect on that, maybe Marion or Warren or Lyndon to just feed off of what David had shared. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I actually agree with David wholeheartedly. I think that for me, I've got mentors from all parts of my life. You know, one or two of the guys from teachers at high school, I still, when I go back home, pick up and find out how they're doing. And you're still able to chat with them because they have the same background as you do. But as you go through in life, whether you're in business, whether you're in government, or whether you're an athlete, or whether you're part of any team, you will have different mentors, people that have different experiences that can come together. So I don't think you can have too many mentors, as Monica McNeil has asked. I think it's as you go through life, you meet people and you gain and absorb information and life experiences. So just as I've got many young people that I mentor, so do I have on a vertical level other people that I can call when I want to chat a bit about something as well. Thanks, Eli.
I definitely agree with Lyndon as well. I must tell you all, it was very difficult to select the photos for that presentation because every mentor or mentee I have, I try and grab a picture. So I had to go through lots of photos to just get it onto one presentation. But I do agree, there can never be too many mentors. But as a young person that is still developing, I do have key mentors that I go to for certain things, and if I need further advice, I seek further advice beyond those mentors as well.
I think I agree with all three, including our David as well. Sometimes there is a little bit of a hurdle to ask for advice of young people to other people or older people. I think the key is really to build up that trusting relationship, both sides. And that means really you can call when you need to. Sometimes obviously we have the mentorship plan, but there are things that come up, and if it needs to be talked after hours or emergency in other sense, then there is somebody there for you. And I think that is really just good to have, that you know there is always somebody there in case you have a crisis, and you can always have a crisis both ways, mentor or mentee.
And one thing, if I could add, is for those of us who are more veteran in all this, you're never too old to have a mentor. You are never too old. You know, oh well, I'm too old. No, if you think you're too old to have a mentor, I would respectfully disagree with that. No matter what stage we are in life, there's always room and there's always space for us to have someone that we look to.
I think we're still receiving one of the questions I also want to have a couple questions that I have. One of the questions I also wanted to talk about, especially as it relates to the sport for social change, the sport for development, the sport and human rights movements, is kind of how does this infusion of mentorship really push the movements forward? You know, what is it that dropping in and making sure mentoring is really key to social change through sport? Like, what is that going to end up doing? So perhaps, you know, in 5 to 10 years, you know, if we're really keep engaging and infusing mentorship, like how do you see that really transforming and having impact in the space of the sport and social, and just even sport in general, but particularly the sport for social change world?
Eli, if I can take a stab, one of the things that I've noticed is that young people in South Africa, ages 18 to 19, are already being offered professional contracts in rugby, in football, in some of the bigger sports as well. And what you find is that if those people, those young athletes who are now stars and celebrities, if they are not mentored properly, you'll find that by the age of 25, 26, their careers are done, and the salaries and money that they may have made is also done, because they would have spent it on all those other things, fast cars and booze and the rest. And we've had an instance here with one of our Springboks, which is a world champion rugby team. That guy went from being a Springbok to being an ordinary construction worker on a farm, and that meant that in his life, the mentoring that he should have had failed, because he should have been able to capitalize on where he was as a top South African Springbok. So I do think mentoring is important for sport. It's important for social change. And I know that in my life, I played chess for South Africa at the highest level. I played at the Olympiads. And for me, having had the ability to speak to older players, they would tell you, make sure your academic life comes first. Make sure that you do whatever you need, because you must have a life beyond sport. And I think that for me was the important one, because whatever you accomplish in life, you must be able to fall back on things. And I think that is where the mentoring for me as an athlete came in. Thanks, Eli.
I would like to add more recently, oh, it's raining so hard, I don't know whether you hear it. More recently, mentorship creates safe spaces, and we do need safe spaces in sport. There's been so many human rights abuses, or with coaches and children, and that come forward only lately. So if there is proper mentorship, then there is trust to actually tell human rights violations, that there is trust to believe victims, and it's really, it's vital. It's vital in both ways. So the whole aspect, I think, in sport that is very much undercover in a lot of countries still, could be very much affected if there was more mentorship, planned mentorship, organized mentorship, and more development of young people through mentorship.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we have a few more minutes for any comments. We're still seeing a couple folks sharing. I think we're still getting used to the chat and the Q&A. David has popped back on. I don't know, David, would you like to share?
Well, I was just going to add to the comments that were made about sport. I think we sort of come at this two ways, right? There's sort of intentional mentoring where it's like, you are my mentor and you're in a mentoring program. And then there's mentors and mentees walking throughout the world. And sport is such a natural binding proposition to mentoring opportunities, but they're not all positive, right? I mean, we've all had bad coaches, traumatic mentoring experiences with coaches. And so I think because sport and coaches loom so large as an influential force in young people and all people's lives, I think they have the opportunity to do that with a mentoring mindset and to do that with a developmental mindset or not. And so when they do it with a mentoring and a developmental mindset, to your point about what's different 10 years from now, we have totally different citizens, totally different models of masculinity and femininity and everything in between, but they are models writ large. And so we're just missing huge opportunities when we don't use sport as a powerful force for positive development, for positive mentoring, and it's just there for the taking. It's a lag, not a lead, when it comes to mentoring if we don't do it right.
Excellent. Any just final remarks? We have just a couple minutes before we're going to transition, and this has been an amazing session. But yeah, I wanted to provide just a couple minutes for the three of you to sort of any reflections or any leave behinds, kind of final words. But thank you so much. It's been a wonderful session.
Eli, thank you very much also to you and your team. And just from my side, you know, because I've been in government now for about 22 years, it's great also having had mentors along the way in my workspace and in my personal space as well, because I'm able to then look to see what I can receive, but at the same time also give back to those that are entering the workplace, as it were, now. So for me, mentoring, very, very important aspect. Nurture those relationships, experience the relationships by sitting down, having a cup of tea and coffee. And as Professor Marion said, it's a safe space because we don't always want to be able just to take decisions because this is what we need to do. Sometimes you need to consult, and sometimes you need that objective voice that can tell you, Lyndon, have you thought about that? Have you thought about this? And then those different viewpoints from the mentor, because it's a safe space and the person, he or she would have no agendas. That person would just give you options that you should be able to consider. So that's been my experience. I've had a very positive experience with mentoring as a whole. So for me, mentoring is important, and I would urge everybody, as Mrs. Dr. Mary Hamza said, you're never too old to have a mentor. Thanks.
Awesome. And I just also wanted to actually express my gratitude to Lyndon and Marion as well. As a young person, this has been a very rewarding, gratifying experience to be in this panel with you guys. And then also to Eli, your team, and everybody that's in attendance, to please continue doing the work that you're doing in mentorship and in sport development. We need you, and we look up to you every day. So thank you so much again for giving us the space. It's been absolutely incredible.
And for me, it was a very humbling experience to share with Warren and Lyndon. And these are two representatives. We have a lot of youth in Warren's group and also under Lyndon that are very similar, and that includes females of different ages as well. I think in terms of the mentorship, you play so many roles. You are a friend, you are a counselor, you are a critical friend. Sometimes you're an open ear, and sometimes you have to share your own sorrows as well. It's just, this is the greatness of mentorship, because it really affects you, how you are, who you are, and you play it forward. And so with those words, and thank you again to my co-panelists and Eli, big thank you. And it's so nice to see all the people. It's like a huge family here. Please keep it up. And also the sharing of those different mentorships ideas across continents and cultures. I think that is something that I'm looking forward throughout the day. I hope the power is not cut in South Africa, but I think that is important, and I hope it's one of many seminars. Thank you, Ian and David and Matt and Eli and Mary for making that happen very much.
Thank you, guys.